So today, instead of a monologue sermon, we're offering a trilogue sermon. And my main role is to ask some questions. So Ken and Brad, you guys have known each other for a very long time and also have learned from each other in all kinds of ways. And this story about, I've heard it oftentimes as a stewardship story only, but it seems to have a much deeper meaning than that in terms of the theme of today, blessed to be a blessing. Because the interesting thing about the story is that Jesus doesn't really get into the economics of it. He's really more concerned with how people are doing what they're doing. And he praises the widow, who in that time and culture would have been at the very bottom of the economic heap, a woman without a husband and probably brothers or spouse or whatever to take care of her. That's why there's so much, would have been very vulnerable. That's why there's so much in both Hebrew Bible and in Jesus' teachings about taking care of widows and orphans. But he turns that around and makes her into a powerful person, more powerful than the ones who flaunt their status or whatever. So as musicians, as people of faith, what's been an experience of in your life of having an odd blessing, which the widow seemed to have had, that turned into a real blessing?
Can I start?
Yes.
Of course.
I haven't studied for this.
This is a story that was told to Beverly and me by our dear friend Tony Campolo. Many of you know Tony, a well-known speaker, prophet, one of the significant voices in trying to bring evangelicals to the place of loving justice. And by the way, Tony now has suffered several strokes and is no longer mobile, but his mind is still active. But he tells this story about walking down a street in Philadelphia one morning on his way to an engagement, preoccupied with all the stuff that he's got to do. And along comes a man who is obviously unhoused. And he walks up to Tony and says, "Excuse me." And poor Tony's like, "Oh no, he's going to want money, and I don't have any money. What am I going to do about this? But I have to be present. I have to be here." So Tony says, "Yes, sir. What can I do for you?" And from the lips of the homeless man comes the most interesting reply. He said, "Well, I wanted to share this cup of coffee with you because the coffee is particularly delicious today." And Tony said, "I'm going to drink from the same cup that undoubtedly has seen a good bit of filth and dirt from the street, whatever. But how do I say no?" And so he said, I took the cup in my hand and I drank. And then the man said, "Could I have a hug?" Well, come on, old friend. It's coffee time again. While the world is rushing to its judgment day, judgment day. I know you say you're busy, but the pace can make you dizzy. Besides all that, I sure do need a friend. There'll be time enough to fight the windmills and all the battles that never seem to end. So from now till quarter after, or from now till 20 after, or from now till 30 after, 40 after, 50, or from now till ever after, it's a cup of love and laughter. So come on, old friend, it's coffee time again. That's my story.
I'm not letting him go first again. That's all I can say. It's hardly fair.
Better thee than me, my friend.
Better, that's right. I knew in general that this was going to happen, but didn't know the question until it just happened. And it did remind me of something when I was a teenager, and you know, if you go to church with your parents because you have to, but you're not necessarily into it. I do remember this sermon from, it must be 50 years ago now. And there are a lot of biblical scholars in here, and I might be wrong, but it's still a good metaphor that apparently, according to the preacher that day, in the Jewish temple of that time, when you went up to make your offering, there was a sort of a horn that was made out of metal, a little bit like a thing that would amplify an old gramophone. And so then you know, coins now are symbols, you know, they're really made out of cheaper metals. But in those days, if it was just a little widow's mite, it would be a little bit of silver, because it was really how much silver is in this. And if it was a valuable coin, it would be much heavier. And so the rich people would go up there with a big show, and then it would put it in this tin horn that it would slide down into the box, and it would make a big racket. You know, clearly I am a rich person, and here's my gold pieces, and many of them clunking down there. And then the widow went up in front of everybody, and she had these two little tiny things that hardly made any noise at all. And it would have been embarrassing for her. But then Jesus said, no, but proportionately, that is a much bigger deal. That she can hardly afford to do that. And that, you know, we, like your story about the homeless man, oh boy, here's a person who, what do they have to give me? And in fact, and I was thinking of the final stanza of In the Bleak Midwinter, the poem by Christina Rossetti. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. But what can I give him? Give my heart. So sometimes that's all you have to give, but that's the main thing, isn't it, really? And the rest, we have to pay for the heat and lights and bringing a guy like this in once in a while. But yeah, to be together. Talitha asked, what is an unexpected blessing? And I would say also that, you know, I grew up in a little town that only had 900 people, and I had no musicians in my background. And then I ended up going into it for a living, and you know, now I've done it for a long time, and it's kind of part of who I am. But that's not how I feel, and you could probably relate to this. I'm still the kid from Lakeville, Minnesota when it had 900 people. And the fact that I get to call guys like this friend, or be in a church that supports stuff that I am interested in as a musician, which is really how I worship. The support that Talitha and the council give, the financial wherewithal that you all contribute, that is an unexpected blessing, so thank you.
She did not make much noise as the coins went tinkling in. She did not have much poise, considering where she'd been. So easily ignored, so easily put aside. Now move aside, young woman. It's time for all the rest of us. It's time for all the rest of us. It's time for all the rest of us to give the gifts we have to give. She did not make much noise. At least they could not hear. But somehow I suspect there was more than that to hear. somewhere in the highest heaven. I think the timpani was played. The strings and the trumpets went on and on and on. As in that horn those coins she laid. And the bells begin to ring, and the angel choir begins to sing. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Celebrate the mighty widow. Celebrate the widow might. Celebrate the mighty widow in the kingdom of love and light.
Amen.